What is good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of MAIM Time, coming to you live or pre-recorded from Southern California. I'm all the way here in San Diego, and we have our brother Gavin Masumiya in LA. You're in LA right now, right?
Yep. Hi. Yeah. Konnichiwa. Hey, everybody. MAIM Time. Here in the building.
Yes, finally. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while with you, Gavin. And just to give the audience a bit of context, we met each other through the, it sounds kind of cringy to say it, but the Badass Asian Dudes Facebook group, right? Which is a great brotherhood that bunch of Asian dudes, basically, mostly based on the West Coast, but we just talk about basically just living our best lives and what it means to be a badass Asian dude. So it's a great community. If you are interested, if you are a badass Asian dude or aspiring to be, then hit me up and you can join our monthly meetups. Okay, so just plugging that aside, Gavin, would you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into that badass Asian dudes group to start?
Yeah, Gavin Masumiya. Yeah, born and raised over here in Los Angeles on the west side. Fourth generation Japanese American. Shout out to my heritage here, but I was also born in Los Angeles. So it's interesting because born in an individualized culture, right, society in America, but then my roots grew up in a community center, and that prompted this sense of not just genetically, but through our environment, a very collectivistic way of being with people and other Japanese American families. So I think I have this like mixture that sometimes was confusing growing up of like, who am I? And trying to fuse this sense of individualism and collectivism that is largely a part of who I am and, you know, how I diplomatically like navigate through situations. I'm also a public speaking coach. I was very shy growing up. That's a big part of why I'm so compassionate about wanting to, you know, help people to fall in love with their voice. I have my own business for that. And I also do contract work with companies like Ultra Speaking with a similar mission. And I'd like for just the whole experience of expressing and speaking to be a fun experience, no matter if you're extroverted or introverted, but especially for people who perceive themselves as introverts. I know I'm diving a little deep, but I think that sometimes, at least in my journey too, I've confused my shyness, this insecurity of expressing myself, for introversion. And I think that introverts have a very powerful voice when exercised with, just the right kind of support. So I'm passionate about helping them.
That's cool. And how is it that you came across Badass Asian Dudes and you joined the group?
Yeah, it was so cool. I was in a thread with one of the people where it was like handed off because it was, I don't think it was started, but during the pandemic, there were three people. It was Sable Shen. Yeah, you had him on the podcast. It was Nick Hong and Victor Ung. They were, I don't know if they took it over. And that's when that was around the time that I was in the Asian Hustle Network. I gave a little long intro that tends to happen. Shout out to, Brian and for, helping to start that up because that's how I connected with them. And then they were getting more involved with the circles that I used to hold called FlowFam, personal development freestyle. And then through that, they said, hey, we're starting this up. Like, join this part and, you have a lot that you can contribute into the group. And so that was the segue from Asian Hustle Network into FlowFam, then into the Badass Asian Dudes during the pandemic.
That's cool, man. There are so many things I want to ask, so I'm trying to think of what would be good to go into right now. But basically, for me, growing up in a mostly white neighborhood with some minorities, like it was. And also being the only Korean family growing up in, say, North Carolina, it was very, very lonely. And I didn't have like a strong sense of Korean identity. So anyone who's listened to my podcast and all, you can shut your ear off for like a minute because like you've heard this all before. But like
hear it newly, everyone. Hear it newly.
Hear it newly. It's just I had a very troubled sense of identity. Like, people would call me Chinese, right? Or are you Chinese or Japanese, right? And some of the mean kids, they call me a chink, and to go back to China, I'm like, I'm not even Chinese, that's offensive on so many different levels. And then, but I'd say like I'm Korean, but then I'd be like, well, I was born in Korea, but I moved to America when my family was one, so I have no recollection of Korea. The only people that I know who are Korean are my parents, and we have a dysfunctional family. We don't know how to communicate. They don't speak English. I don't speak Korean. It's just a bunch of yelling at home. It's very dysfunctional, and there's a lot of intergenerational trauma there. You know, a lifetime of negativity to unpack and all that. So I resented like my Korean identity. I was just like, if being Korean means like, you know, being in part of this family where like we don't communicate, we don't respect each other, we don't like talk, we don't care to even show that we want to express our feelings to each other or like, or, you know what I mean, all that. Then like I don't want anything to do with being Korean. Like I wish I wasn't born Korean. I wish I wasn't even Asian. You know, I wish I was white or black or, you know, at least those kids can speak English with their parents, you know. So that's kind of like my demons in like a nutshell, like just a lifetime of like, well, what am I? Am I Korean? Am I Asian? Am I American? And then I tried to deny like, oh, I'm just American. No, I'm not even Korean. But then you look in the mirror, I look in the mirror, and like I've got the slanted eyes. Like I'm Asian. You can't run away from who you are, and to do so is delusional on a deep level, and it's tragic because I see so many Korean American or Asian American people, just Asian diaspora worldwide, right? They could be of any culture, but then they just assimilate fully into that culture. And I'm not saying it in a good or bad way. It's just like they've decided to divorce themselves as much as possible from their Asian roots. And I think that this is a journey and a challenge that for all of us, of all diaspora, whether you're Korean American or Asian American, Japanese American, fourth gen, or just like Asian diaspora, you could be Chinese, German, or, you know, Vietnamese, French, right? You might go through this part where like you're like, well, you know what, that's not a part of who I am. And it might be because you have like personal emotional resentment towards your own parent or your culture. Maybe your relatives are just shitty, uneducated, backward people, and you prefer to be identified with the Western culture that you grew up with, whether that's in Europe or Australia or, you know, America. So, you know, I'm going on and on because like my mind thinks about all these things, and like I don't always do a good job expressing these things concisely. So having brought about this context, Gavin, this is how I wrestled with my identity. And now after going to Korea, living there for 20 years, and now living back in America, I'm just like, I have a much deeper and richer appreciation of who I am as Asian diaspora, as a Korean American. And I think that there are healthier ways to go about it. And that's why I want to have this discussion. So to go back to you, how was it for you growing up, born and raised in LA? You know, I'm assuming there's a lot of Asian people. So, but how was it for you, your personal experience?
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving me context.
Identify as Japanese and all that, you know.
Yeah, thank you for giving me.
Different.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving context around yours because I love this interaction because this is as when we just think of ethnically, this Japanese American and then Korean American that's here. I'll get a little more of the context of why I think that's so special. Is that to rewind, growing up, right? Like I was mentioning that I was a part of this Japanese American community, and just to bring a little more history behind that is that World War II is a humongous like event when it comes to Japanese history, but Japanese American history, right? We could talk, and so the second generation, my grandparents and my great aunties and uncles, they were here. They established their lives in pretty much the Los Angeles area. World War II broke out in the 1940s, and then they, you know, were stripped of everything and said like, you got to go behind this barbed wire fence. Pretty much, U.S. their own government didn't trust them, right? So essentially, you know, from that happening after the war, when they got out, these community centers were formed where Japanese came together to support one another. That's where I was in Boy Scouts all the way to Eagle through something called the Venice Japanese Community Center. And I played basketball. And so a lot of the sense of team orientation and leadership earlier on came from these community centers, very family, community service oriented. So we always had to work together. So I felt very lucky, even though I didn't perceive it that way, to just learn about teamwork around devoting oneself to helping to contribute to a greater whole that sometimes is beyond monetary value. We would just go Sundays, Saturdays, oh, we have to help out with this person's Eagle project. I didn't really know him. He was just one of the other kids in Boy Scouts. But we ended up doing that, so it instilled a sense of value of giving. My parents were really good with that. But like, you know, I went through the public school system growing up. My mom's rest in peace, mama. She was a retired kindergarten teacher, but she really fought to try to get us into certain types of charter magnet schools growing up. And I went to open school. LA's pretty diverse compared to other areas in the United States. So I grew up in schools that was pretty diverse. Then growing up in a Japanese community center. But like the thing that was, I guess, challenging that I had to navigate is like when emotions come up for myself, how do I actually relate to it? We don't really, I think it's just a normal thing for Asian American, especially those who are more closer to the immigrant journey. But even here as a fourth generation, we don't really talk about emotions. That's just something we don't do. So when it comes up, like the best thing to do or getting trained in is just be stoic about it. Don't talk about it. And then that kind of like welds up. And I had to slowly just learning how do I relate to my emotions without being overtaken by them, without feeling like a victim to it. How do I talk about it without losing myself inside of emotions? Because I think emotions are also treading water. They can be dangerous if they're always just followed. Like what gets happened if it's just always following emotions? Sometimes commitment's more important than emotions. But like that was something I had to learn, how to relate to this. So how to relate to my emotions when we don't talk about it in the household, right? But why bringing it back into why I thought that this is so cool about you being Korean American, me being Japanese American. The time that I experienced, I guess, the most racism in a diverse area that I grew up in was when I went to middle school, Palms Middle School. And then there was like this Korean crew, and I thought they were so cool, man. They just hung out into the corner. They just wore baggy pants, and I wanted to be like this. I forgot his name. He was a short kid, but he had such a big voice. This rowdy, like Napoleon complex Korean dude. Sometimes wore cornrows, and they hated me. Like I didn't even know why back then, right? Like, and they would like threaten to jump me. In 8th grade because I was really shy, but I started to dress differently, highlighted tips and stuff because I wanted to kind of be like them, FUBU, rock aware. So certain Korean girls started to like me, and they started to hang out with me in later 7th grade, 8th grade, and like they just hated me. I'm like, is it because I'm talking to the Korean girls or they're hanging out with me or something there? And they threatened to jump me, and then I didn't realize why. Like why if they don't know me, why don't they like me? And it was only later when I started to educate a little more about Japanese Korean history and Japanese trying to colonialize these areas and raping and so much dishonorable things, right, for the sake of conquest. It's like, oh, wow, this could have been very like generationally passed on, you know? And what do we know as a teenagers growing up? But I was kind of conflicted too, because I'm like, wow, there's people that kind of look like me, but we're part of different countries within Asia, the Asian diaspora. That was kind of confusing for me. And then when I went to UC Irvine for college, and feel free to have any questions for me, I joined a fraternity that was largely Chinese American. And when I went to join that, it was the most Chinese American I've ever seen, like people all from the 626, Arcadia, Walnut, Diamond Bar, these areas that I didn't really know growing up because I'm from LA over on this side. And then when I joined, they're just like, dang, do you speak a lot Japanese? I'm like, very little. Not like when they did. And so I got othered in the sense of like, oh, you just like whitewashed. You like whitewashed. And they use this word, right? Like giving white so much credit. Like, oh, you whitewashed. And like, I didn't understand because my grandparents always spoke to us in English. I think that was affected by World War II. My great aunties and uncles always spoke to us in English. My parents always spoke to us in English. And so then I'm being ridiculed or made fun of for something that was like cultural I didn't really truly get. And then I think that people can get typecasted this way, and we give white people, and I don't mean those into erased pieces, like whitewash. What is this term really coming from in the way too? And so that was a big journey, kind of for me to kind of work through of like, who am I then? Why am I even part of a family where I'm being othered? Like, and you know, but me wanted to fit in. So that was part of my college journey, as well. But what ended up being a big turning point for me was after I graduated college with a psych degree and a minor in management. I went into social services for 2.5 years. I was a superstar in that, especially when it came to training new employees, but it was low paying and I was burnt out as fuck. And something called for me to escape this race of, I didn't want to go back to school to become a case manager, even though they said I was really good for it, for the role. I liked the training aspect, but something was bigger for me. But I wanted to get a sabbatical and go somewhere, so I went to Japan. Teaching English, one of these ways of soul searching, let me just get out. It's such a great way to kind of live in another place, earn some type of income, not thriving, but use that to travel around the world. You're not going to save much, but you get to see another world and immerse in it. And I immersed back into the motherland, a place I only visited a few times. And when that happened, Mime, and then I was trying to go in there with a chip on my shoulder, like, I'm going to show them how to be confident. I'm going to show Japanese, like, what it means to, like this Western idea of confidence. Look people in the eye, speak up. And it really turned my world upside down when I realized, like, that was such an ignorant way of approaching going into a country that of my roots, but one that I don't understand that well. And I quickly kind of got humbled around this place that the nail that stands out gets hammered back in, and that there's value in being quiet, looking around, trying to understand a culture, and then navigating from there, as opposed to thinking I can change something I don't understand. And I mean, there's so much that I can talk about around that piece, but I have a tremendous respect for Japanese culture, and I can see the passive aggressive tendencies that can happen inside of traditional ways of holding oneself inside of Japanese culture. But both, I think, are so important, because I think Japanese are very humble. They're very humble. They're very meticulous, just culturally, if I'm going to generalize. And that's something that I do see in myself. I'm quite meticulous the way I move, the way I pull things out and organize, that I really think is more deeper than environmental. There's something genetically when I would see the students and how they would pull their pens and highlighters out of their pencil bag. I deeply connected with that, because I have that same kind of mannerism where it's exact. There's an exactness to it. But that same exactness too can be very inner critic oriented too, where I'm just like, if I don't get it a certain way, I'll beat myself up, So I think that was a very transformational experience for me as far as being humble, and I felt like I connected more to this collectivistic side of myself being in Japan. So when I came back, I felt a little more well-rounded, and I also got drinking and all that stuff out of the way, so I just came back with healthier behaviors than when I first arrived in Japan.
How many years were you in Japan for that time?
2013 to 2015, so I was 2 years.
2 years, okay.
How long were you in Korea for?
About 12 years.
A decade.
About 12 years. From 20 to 32. Like, I'm 32 now. I'm about to be 33. Yeah,
wow.
So I spent a long time in the mother country than you did.
Yeah.
Quick side note, I think, say what you want about being an English teacher. I've got friends, who got a lot of shit to say about English teachers in Asian countries. But if there's just no way for an Asian American or an Asian diaspora to go back to their mother country, but to do that for a while, I think that's a worthwhile stint. I think that's a worthwhile journey for anybody to go back to the motherland. So let's say you're Chinese American or Korean American, and especially for Korean Americans, you have to serve in males like that. Now, for when I went, like, it was okay. Like, I was kind of like grandfathered in, but now, like, you have to serve in the Korean military. You can't just give up your Korean citizenship, become an American citizen, and give up your Korean citizenship. They closed that loophole. So, the only way maybe is, like, if you're a naturalized U.S. citizen, for example, then you'd have to be working in Korea on an English teacher's visa, right? So, and so I'm just throwing this out there, having not gone through that route myself, and I know it's difficult and challenging to have your visa tied to a work thing, but I definitely do encourage any Asian American, any diaspora to spend some time in the homeland, and if you can, teach English and make some, even if a modest income, it's I found it's, again, like the markets and the economy's changing, but if you can save up a little bit of money and then just experience the homeland, learn the language, the culture, and also understand the privilege of growing up in America, that like, oh, you can be a fucking English teacher and just go to not just Asia, not just your own mother country, but any country, and then just see how hard it is, right, in a competitive society like Korea, Japan, or China. Why all the Asians want to get out of the rice cooker, right? I analogize our mother countries as hot rice cookers, right? With millions and millions of grains of rice, and that's us people. But because of the pressure of economic forces, of war and famine, and all the pressures that make life hard, we are like, this is too hot. Let's get out of this rice cooker. Let's get out of the frying pan and not into the fire, but where there's greener pastures. And then we end up coming to America or Canada or Australia. And then so I'm saying, as the lucky rice grains, right, that have been sown far away, if you can have the privilege to go back to Asia and just see what life is like, you'd have a greater appreciation for the struggles that your parents went through. Maybe if they're the first generation immigrants, you'd have more compassion and understanding for what our peoples go through, right? If you're Chinese or a Korean or Japanese American, and you might feel divorced, you might be like, you know what, I don't give a fuck about, mainland Chinese or mainland Japanese or the Korean people back, like, living in Korea for 12 years gave me a deep perspective into the struggles and the suffering that Korean people face, and how hard of a difficult society is. And I'll never know, because I didn't even grow up there as a kid, having to, or going to school and studying for like 12 hours a day, like a full-time job, from the time I'm a kid, all that kind of crazy stuff. So that's just one thing I want to put out to the audience. It's like, I think, going to the motherland, especially if you're kind of an Asian American, like, and I know that attitude, I see that in other people, other Korean Americans, and even myself, like, oh, I'm gonna show these Korean people how to be more confident, like how to speak more directly. There's a part of me just like, oh, I'm sick of these Korean people. They're too shy to just talk and speak what's on their mind. Just fucking say it. You're not gonna die.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so frustrating, right? But it's just like, oh, if you grew up there, you'd be just like them. How can you
that's the thing where I thought about that a lot when I'm over there. I'm like, wow, I think my personality would have been quite different if I was born there versus in Los Angeles, right? It's just, would it be so different? And so I do agree to the sentiment that there is a different way of experiencing my lineage or my roots by having lived there versus just going there for even like a little vacation, right? There's a different kind of mentality that goes in of really learning about more of the culture and the types of withholdings that took place inside of the school with the teachers, which I think is a microcosm of culture, or maybe what work could look like, in a corporate hierarchy. And then people don't say what they really want to say. Alcohol being a really big piece, so that they kind of, even though I couldn't understand everything, I could tell like, oh, Mindok Sai, they're complaining about something with work related, or some of the English teacher would try to translate for me when I couldn't get all of the meaning right. And like, I'm like, wow, how suffocating that can be. Yet it's so safe. Yet it's so like the public transport system is so efficient, right? Customer service is on another level without needing tipping, and they're so clean. There's a type of agency that the students take when it comes to owning and being respectful of the environment. There's no trash around, and there's very little trash cans in Japan. So so these little aspects really like I'm grateful for, because the community center growing up and kind of emulated that. So it allowed me to reinforce like, oh wow, the community center was a little microcosm of Japan when I was growing up, minus the language, but more so existing together in harmony, where families, it's like a little village right there. And my mom would always say, like, it doesn't take a family to raise a family, it takes a village. And to me, the community center was my village, and it really just changed the way. And if I ever have kids, I absolutely would want them to be a part of a community center.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and so would you say that that time you spent in Japan, right, as a LA born and raised Japanese American, you spending that couple of years living and working in Japan, would you say that was a net benefit for you as a person?
One of the best decisions of my life. One of the best decisions. If not, at some points I said it was the best. Top 3 of my life. Because I learned so much about myself. One, I learned about the value of running away. That was one. Like, it's sometimes there's parts, it's good to run away. There's benefit. There's a net positive sometimes, even though it doesn't solve every problem. I moved out of the house. I moved away from friendships that of the same cycle of life that I was going through. And it allowed me to really think for myself on how do I want to live my life. That's when I got into coaching. I did Tony Robbins 4 months before I went to Japan. I moved there, Day with Destiny, dropped $5,000. People thought I was crazy around this. I've said this in various podcasts and in places before, but that really set me up to really like, how do I want to live my life? And it was like the homework for my place in Japan to live more intentionally. I started coaching pro bono people over there, and I fell in love with this process of trying to future pace how to close the gap between what people want, starting with this person's health. This person was thinking what's next after the Navy, and I did that every Saturday. I still maintain a sense of working out over there. I gave a go to entrepreneurship with online publishing. Well, it's like this online publishing platform on publishing company on Amazon, and I had to hire like these virtual assistants and aspects, and like it taught me like more about online business in a way that I never would have. I maybe wouldn't have tried if I just was stuck at home within this social services job, and one of the most beautiful relationships in my life. I attended Toastmasters for the first time that allowed me to see like public speaking is something I want to take to the next level. All of that was like through being over there, right? So when I came back with the charge that, okay, I'm just going to do 1 more year in Japan, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to see if I can secure my job again for cash flow purposes, and then go into a coaching program. And I'm going to join Toastmasters within the first month of coming back. Like, I had a sense of clarity on what this next chapter of my life was going to be. And that's what happened, So that running away was one of the best things that I can do when I return back.
That's great. Yeah, I have said this multiple times to everyone that I know and on my podcast that moving to Korea was the best decision of my life.
Like, hands down.
So yeah, so I think you can't lose in the sense, and even if you go and you spend, it could be like 6 months to 2 years or 5 years, even if you go and you're like, you know what, that was like a miserable time. Let's say you had a miserable time and you're like, oh, the society's so hard, it's just not for me, I couldn't find the job that I wanted, this and that, I couldn't find the right people, whatever it is from your perspective as, say, like, 24-year-old Korean American John Kim. At least you can say that you went. At least you can say that you learned some things, right? And because you have perspective that you wouldn't have otherwise. Even if it was really crappy, you could have some perspective like, oh, thank God I don't live in Korea anymore, but I live in Southern California. Not saying that I feel that way at all. I had the best time of my life in Korea, and I'm very grateful for the time that I spent there. And I think I had one of the best experiences compared to most Korean Americans or diaspora that I met. Like, I thought I was really just living a great life, working all different kinds of jobs. Singing and dancing in front of kids as a Disney English children's performer. I worked for a company that started.
Wow.
That started in Tokyo,
okay.
And they had a Korea branch started over a decade ago. So that was like a main job of mine. It was a part-time job that like paid a lot of my bills.
Is that when you first went over there? You were a performer?
So first couple years, I just kind of like eked by as like a private English tutor. Like just meeting people through acquaintances, through my brother, who I'm very grateful for, whose idea it was for us to go to Korea together initially. He just had some acquaintances that said, hey, MAIM, like these people want, to speak English to someone for an hour a couple times a week to improve their English, And so like that's kind of how I started. But I think it was a couple years in, I was going out to open mics. I went to open mics and I did everything. Like I did stand up comedy. I sang. I did guitar covers at open mics. I did poetry, and I just went out with a lot of people. I drank a lot, partied a lot, hung out with people, and this one guy that I met with, I met at playing open mics. He was playing in a band, and then he said, "Hey, Mime, like I know you you like to sing, and you're good vibes, and you seem like a reliable guy. Like you show up when you say you do. Like, do you want to work a job with kids, singing to kids? We do telephone English. You can sing to kids over the telephone at the call center at the office. We sing. You learn a couple hundred songs. You learn the melodies, but then you read the lyrics in a book in front of you over the phone to these kids, and." On weekends, there are activities, there are events where you can, you can sing and play, you can sing and dance and act in front of the children who you sing to over the phone, because they're like our company members. That's a whole thing. It's a whole like multi-million-dollar business that's thriving. It's like they bring a ton of money, mostly from Tokyo in Japan. They're huge in Japan. It's a whole nother thing. But
wow,
that's something I could see you doing actually. It's like because I'm pretty sure they must have been in operation when you were in town. So like
maybe
yeah. But anyways, because you're good vibes and you like to flow, and so you can.
Well, that's cool.
I'm sure you can sing and dance. But anyways. So I was very fortunate, and like I was also a club party promoter for a few years up until COVID, and I just had the best time of my life, right? So it's just like a lot of things just worked out for me, and I'm very fortunate. I'm very grateful. I know that's not everyone's journey, So,
but definitely isn't. But
I encourage everyone to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, just to provide context for myself, that was between the ages of me being 26 to 28. And that phase of my life when I was trying to find myself, like, was such a perfect time for me to do that, So just kind of like gauging where you are. Like, I think that there's just so many experiences. And what really helped me too while I was over there is my friend gave me a fountain pen, like this really nice fountain pen, and this journal. So I was already journaling before, but I just documented like my thoughts, like what was coming up for me while on the trip. I would do a lot of vlogging even if I didn't post it, but I used to post some of these too on YouTube back in the day. Ended up deleting all that shit, but I was like constantly like documenting, and I was reminded of what Tony Robbins said one time, like that a life worth living is worth recording. And that type of introspective practice of through writing and then through the video really allowed me to like reflect on my learnings, to really just see what's coming up. So it made my time over there a lot more, I guess, intentional, because I had this process of introspecting more or less on a weekly basis, and that really helped. So I think that journaling or some type of writing in a way of recording oneself and monitoring his thoughts is really helpful on this kind of journey.
That's an excellent point, Gavin. Yeah, I when I look back at my life, like I'm almost 33, I don't think that I journaled enough. I think I could have always spent a bit more time reflecting on things and writing out my thoughts. So yeah, if you're gonna, that's a great, I think, supplement to encouraging our listeners to go abroad back to like bring a journal, write a journal out, have a nice pen, a nice journal you like to take out, right, and just enjoy writing, just think writing thoughts like, oh, I'm back in Japan and like this is how I'm feeling.
Absolutely. But, and even more practical, bro, it's like if people wherever people are, like even if you're at home and you're not traveling somewhere, I think some type of writing introspective process like that can be really helpful. And even this next level that my cousin and my other friend had inspired is like I'm now using also ChatGPT, because basically I have a Google document that I write out what I did for the day, because my Google calendar, as much as I try to live by it, I don't always have 100% integrity with this. So I write out what I do, I write out what I eat and what time I eat. Not track micros or macros, but I like to see how my food and intake influences, because I do care about what I'm putting into my body and my overall fitness pieces. But then I'll highlight, I'll have a note section at the bottom where I write out what are any insights, any insecurities, any things that are coming up. and then I'll highlight the big things so that today, right before this, bro, because we're at the 1st of June, everyone, so happy new month wherever this is posted, but that's to give you a timestamp. I reflected on my May. And but I have a ChatGPT called Mind Dump, inspired by a friend, and basically this Mind Dump I'll update, and I just do a speak to text, and I just vomit my thoughts out, and I don't ask it to don't summarize yet, don't give me any type of reflections back, just hear me out, right? So it doesn't respond back, and then later on I can ask it like, what are some themes, what are things that I don't see about it? So in this AI era, that's a great way, another way that I've been practicing to excavate my thoughts, by having a project on ChatGPT or whatever platform you want, and use it as a mind dump.
That's brilliant, actually. That's the first time I heard of ChatGPT you being used for that. Because I'm aware of a mind dump. I am aware, like, okay, you could do, speech to text, but then asking ChatGPT after to talk to you about it. That's pretty cool. And here the funny thing
Bro,
is,
it's like awesome. Yeah.
On my Google Calendar, I have an event at the end of every month called the monthly review, and I never do it. I never do it. Yeah. Right? So you have more integrity than I do, bro. but I know, because writing and journaling, wherever you are, whoever you are in life,
wherever you are, bro. Like, and I'm just classic, man. Like, so I'm very Google Suite oriented. So how I track my habits is through Google Sheets. And so ones that I want to, like, I'm currently taking creatine, so I want to see what my streak is, my meditation practice, I'm taking singing lessons, session 8, shout out to Preeti. So I'm tracking, like, doing how many times am I doing it on a daily? I'm like at day 50 or something, dude, every day, 11 minutes, man. And it's nice to just see. And what I noticed, so this is different from the Google document where I'm writing out what I did, it's more habit tracking. The cool thing is that when I'm like feeling off, like just emotionally, I feel like shit, it's like, God, there's some correlation between my Google Sheet and when I start to see more reds, meaning no, I did not do my meditation, no, I did not check my YNAB finances, I start to feel more shitty. And the more greens I see, right, I fulfilled on my singing exercise today, I read my CPR/manifesto today, right, I did my meditation today, I did a Wim Hof or Loving Awareness or Joe Dispenza, I'm like just more steady. I'm more stable. So I like to just keep it simple. Archaic Google Sheet, track my habits, and then what did I do for the day? What did I eat? Any insights I see on my Google document. And Google document, it has this wonderful thing where it's not just the outline where you see the outline on the side. You can create pages within it. So basically my Keystone Habits or my Google document has one titled My Daily CPRs, which is basically what I do each day, and each one has a heading 1. So it just, so when I did today for my reflections of May, I go back to that and I copy and paste all the highlighted insights and stuff, and I paste it onto the next page, which is my monthly reflections there, and each one has a sub page underneath it. And I'm like, oh, that document is where all my gold is at, It's so cool. So I'm just utilizing the pages section of Google document, I think is so cool. I'm like a nerd around that. And a life worth living is worth recording. So it's just been such a lifesaver for me. It's allowed me to be more stable because I'm very passionate. If people see, like, I can be enthusiastic, and enthusiasm can be ungrounded. Writing this kind of piece helps me to connect back to earth, because I know my tendencies around it, that I could just get taken away by some passion, but it's like, I got to get back to earth, baby. So Google Document, Google Sheets helps me to do that.
That's great. It sounds like you're an organized dude. I like that. I have I used to use a Google Sheet to like habit track, and this is not a productivity podcast.
It's not.
But I digress. Because I always feel like I could be more organized. I use like a combination of Google Docs and Notion and whatever. And but I find I used to use Evernote, but now I use Notion mostly for especially for all this podcast stuff. So I try to use Notion. Nice. Yeah.
I want to get better at this. I know that this is not a productivity podcast, but it's like, how do we, as whoever's listening, right? Like, how do we get to this next level of our growth, whatever that looks like for you out there? And so I'm looking at like, yeah, how do I get to this next level, optimizing? And, you know, I talk about flow a lot. If people don't know, like, oh yeah, Gavin talks about flow. What people don't know is I'm heady. Like I'm really in my head. I wanted to be a psychotherapist. I thought I did after school. So that's very analytical piece. So my mind works like that. But the downside of that, and if anyone can relate to this, is it can get into this over analyzing shit. Just constantly just thinking about things, and it's not really doing much. So just kind of like this practice for myself of I'm just starting to actually reintroduce music back into my life, because it allows me to get more connected to this right brain way of like orienting as opposed to constantly analyzing shit. So Stephen Kotler calls this kind of like flow is a mixture of discipline and surrender. It feels so good to be in the sense of flow state where things are just going, being immersed in the moment. But like it actually, there's a sense of discipline and structure that needs to put into it. So, you know, when people say, oh, you talk about flow a lot, but you're actually quite rigid, you know, it's something that I'm constantly trying to balance out. But flow does not mean no structure. When there's a sense of structure, there's a sense of organization. It creates kind of like a ecosystem to dance more within it. And for me, my life is about trying to find what is that kind of sweet spot where discipline and surrender kind of can dance together harmoniously. So.
When did you start? When did you start flowing? Was this something you did like from like high school? Like you just were listening to some hip hop beats with some friends, or like you were just rapping over like, "Yo, listen to me. I'm Gavin. I'm going in. It's a sin for me to not drop some hot stuff on the mic right now. Yeah, it's Gavin time.
Check it out. Where do I begin in order to find out that freestyle is all from within? I think it started, man, when I was growing up. So we didn't have cable, but my grandma did. And my grandma, Channel 39 was BET. And BET had something called The Booth with Big Tigger. And then they would bring on different artists like Lil Wayne and people. And sometimes they would just do songs they already did, but some would freestyle. And Big Tigger would freestyle. And I thought it was the coolest thing. In middle school, there were certain people that would freestyle inside. And I was like, whoa, how do you do that? How do you just create something off of the top? You let it drop, you don't stop, and it still rhymes right there. Like, God, that's so cool. And so I would just practice it inside of my room by myself. And I thought that they were... It allowed me to practice a sense of like being confident that I never had in public. Like freestyle allowed me to tap into this creative reservoir, even though I sucked at it. Like I had insecurities around it, which is why I practiced alone. It allowed me to like use my voice and to speak in a way that I never dared to. And so as like shallow as people think sometimes, like, oh, freestyle this because it comes from a place of bravado. We're having to speak into existence these things with metaphors. I'm so tight, like double lace shoes. Like, what the fuck does that mean? That doesn't mean shit. It's just trying to brag about it in the form of a metaphor, a cleverness. But it was so much deeper for me in the sense of it allowed me to practice confidence. You know, as someone who I really just hated like the fact that I was so like reserved. And how I can be a little louder at home, but why does that not translate back when I'm in a classroom? Is it because I thought I was just like a piece of shit for starting year late? So I wasn't. I was a very anti-stereotypical Asian in that way. I wasn't the top 1% of my class.
Failure.
You know,
you're never gonna amount to anything. You're a failure.
And the thing is that my parents didn't say that, right? My parents didn't say that. I was attaching myself to the golden child of my sister, who was a 4.0 student. Now, my mom, like, was very academic, right? She was very academic, but she wasn't, like, necessarily a tiger mom in that sense. But I was trying to be... I couldn't. I couldn't be my sister, man. She got straight A's in everything. And I would kind of resent that, bro. Like, God, how do I do... fuck. So there was a certain point... Do you have something for me?
Is she older?
Yeah, she's older. It's on the middle. And then I have a younger brother. But my younger brother's smarter than me too. If we're just gonna think like IQ, like those things, SATs, dude, like they excel. They're smarter than me. Even though he didn't do his homework, he could get the same 3.6 grade point average without doing his homework. I had to do my homework. I had to study for the test, or else like I wouldn't have gotten a 5.6, whatever. Like, and that's not a high standard for Asian American 3.6. You know what I mean? So, but that really took a thing on me. But I mean, to bring it back, like freestyle really started in middle school, which was from this place of like it allowed me to practice. I thought it was cool, but more deeply, it allowed me to really practice this sense of start to build my self-esteem, man. You know, with my voice, which I always had a self-consciousness around. I think that's beautiful, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't say this all that much, but I do wish that in another lifetime I would be like a hip hop rap star. Like that was something that was like a dream of mine, like over a decade ago. I've done spoken word at open mic events back in Korea. I even did a couple rap songs, and like I do enjoy. I do enjoy performing. I haven't done enough of it in my life, but I do love open mics and singing, playing guitar, doing covers, whatever. It's a good time.
Dude, let's take that offline. I would love to hear some of your performances. If you just send videos, like send me some videos offline, bro. I would love to see that.
Cheers, man. We'll see. We'll see if there's anything I can, any files I can dust off in the old archives. But, anyways, I think we're also very privileged. There's so much to talk about, but I think one of these things that we can pause and consider is the privilege that we have in this day and age to be, flowing and saying funny, goofy words that rhyme in English, right? The fact that we can do this at all, that we have the time to explore ourselves, to, make a beautiful line of poetry, say something funny that make our friends crack up. The fact that we can do that when our parents and their parents and were busy going through wars and famines and all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
You can't even believe. And here we are just being like, oh, like, how do I be more confident? How do I, like, express myself more? Oh, I'm so out of
like,
place.
What a privilege.
They were going through war and famine. Yes.
Yeah, totally, bro. Totally. Right?
We should laugh at ourselves,
Even to explore self-worth, man, is such a privilege, right?
It
to
is
explore
a privilege,
to explore passion is a fucking privilege, bro. For me to be like, I want to do a coach because I know I'm not going to do accounting. I already knew that shit. But for me to have that mental bandwidth to even consider this concept called passion, to follow interests, follow bliss. What the fuck? That was not even a vernacular word inside of for my grandparents' journey, right? And like that was, and even for my parents, let alone like there's a part of like what's practical to raise a family. What's practical that can sustain to raise a family. So it's a true like blessing to in the world that we live in, like amidst like different types of changes and turmoils that are taking place. There's so much opportunity that we also have. This AI is going to be a whole other revolution that I'm constantly feeling behind. I'm like, wow, but I'm doing my best to see how I can integrate it into my life to improve myself, because it's not going nowhere, right? But we're blessed, man. And so I do make sure before I go to sleep, one thing that I say, it's like my routine thing. When I rest my head, it's like my cue. Like cue is like, how did I get so lucky? How did I get so lucky? And it's not even something for me to answer. It's just like an affirmation question that I say before I go to sleep to remind myself, And whatever happens.
That's almost like a Zen cone. Like, how did I get so lucky? It's almost like a Zen cone. It's just.
What do you mean a Zen cone? What does that mean? What do you mean?
A cone, Koan, from Zen Buddhism. It's a saying. It's a nonsense. It's one of those nonsensical meanings that you listen to and you get it and you achieve enlightenment. That's like the idea. Like what's the sound of one hand? What's the sound of one hand clapping or some bullshit like that? I believe it's Koan. Yeah.
I never heard of that cone. Yeah. Okay, nice.
Yeah, it's like if you hear some story about some like ancient Asian Buddhist. Just I'm sure ChatGPT can come up with some examples. Like it's like it's like a parable or like a fable almost sometimes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
These cones. And,
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like Yeah, man. But
Yeah, so
that's one that I
how did
do.
I get so lucky, right? And I suppose in our own way we are, manifesting in the flesh, like perhaps our nerdy ass, scholarly. What am I trying to say? Our scholarly, philosophical side of our ancestors, right? Because I do believe this is part of like the Asian mind is to have a bit of this. There's a big history of introspection and philosophy, right, within the Eastern philosophies, whether you got Buddhism or Taoism, so we are sort of carrying our own, living our own version of that. Is how I like to look at it, and. It is a joy, right? Like you and I, just the virtue of us having this conversation, you in LA, I'm here in SD, and we can just shoot the shit. We can just talk about like, our past, about the future, about like how lucky we are, how did we get so lucky? And hopefully by the spirit of our voices, someone listening can heal. They can gain some perspective like, oh fuck, I'm not alone. There's other cool bros out there living their best lives, and but they went through shit too. They had their confusion too, and you know what? These fuckers are right. these nerds, these talking heads, right, are right. Like, oh man, like we are like, how did I get so lucky? Oh wow, thank God. Like we're not growing. I didn't grow up in China right now. It's so hard, right? Not knocking on China or the society or the people, but just like we're lucky to grow up in, say, America. And I know life's hard, but just a bit of perspective can do you a world of good.
It can absolutely do a lot, bro. And I just think this is so cool that we can chop it up and shoot the shit like that, where perhaps some of our ancestors of our lineage right there would not like us talking together if we were, like, Japanese, this Korean. We're have traitors. This now. We can have this. We can actually we can vibe together in this way, and not letting just history become like a part that can keep us disconnected.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a couple points I want to circle back to, which is the fact that are you sure that in middle school, that group of Korean kids that you wanted to be like a part of, but they shunned you, are you sure it was because they had an understanding?
I'm not.
That's just a gist that you have.
It's I don't know. It's like an educated assumption, or I'll talk to people like other like Koreans who end up being my friends later on. It's like, so I want to let you know, like in middle school, this happened. Like Koreans didn't like me. And they're like, oh, it might be because the Japanese really were really treated Korea when they tried to colonialize, and so it's like, oh, and I was starting to get that from other Koreans, right? Not from those specific people in Palms, and so I was like, oh, maybe that could make sense. Maybe it was passed generationally, but I don't know if it was that or the Korean girl started to hang out with me, these pieces, but I just knew that was when I really tasted a sense of racism in a way that I haven't growing up in the public school system in LA. And it would always confuse
those
me.
Goddamn racist Korean kids. That's so funny. No, but that's so funny because like, okay, so do you remember, like, were they first generation? Like, because
I don't know.
Because it's like, look, if they just came from Korea, well, that would be stupid on several levels, because like they're immigrants in the country. It's stupid either whether they're third generation Korean American or they're first generation. It's funny.
I mean, whatever the case is, look, we're like 12, 13, 14 years old, right? So who knows? Just that mentality of egocentrism is so strong. So it's just that's just kind of like what it is. And I was curious about how that is, but like, man, my thinking, all I was trying to think about is like, how do I be cool? How do I get accepted? Like, that was really my main focus. That was the thing that, like, how do I get people like me? How do I get girls to like me? How to become popular? All of this egocentrism, So I was not thinking in a place that was about, like, being in service and all these things. It was just my rite of passage as a damn adolescent trying to figure my shit out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel for you, bro. And it's just, like, that's so ironic and tragic because like, that could have been an opportunity for them to take you in as one of their own, right? But like, there's so many things to me that there's so many things I want to say about that alone, because because like for me, I'll tell you one thing. Like when you sell me that story, I'm just like, okay, my feeling is that if I were you, and let's say I was a Korean guy, like as a Korean American, I would have been the kind of person who would still feel like an outsider even to those Korean guys, because I'm say not Korean enough. Again, I don't know how Korean, quote unquote, that they were. But for me, growing up in Korean American church, I always felt like an outsider, because there's different cliques within any ethnic church, right?
Yeah.
There's the Koreans who like are really integrated. They're still part of Korean culture. They're fobs, fresh off the boat, right? So like they're still 100% Korean. They just got off the boat, kind of thing. Or it's just like maybe they're second, third generation, or they're like me. They don't speak any Korean, but they go to Korean church and they know how to eat Korean food and use chopsticks, right? But like they don't speak Korean at home. So I was like those kids. So then I would hang out with those kids, and I like the people who like the Korean kids who like they didn't speak any English, but you know what I mean? It's just natural that there's gonna be different cliques, even though we're all Korean blood, right? So it's like, it's not rocket science. So like for me, when I hear about that, like one, like I feel like, oh, I wouldn't have fit in with those guys either.
You maybe wouldn't have, man.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, man.
Or maybe I would have. And I'm just saying, it's just like, but that's also the reason why I think that's a tragedy. And I think the beauty and what I'm so grateful about growing up in America is that it's made me fundamentally pan-Asian in how I see the world. Like I do believe in a pan-Asian identity, right? Which is kind of a nerdy, weird thing to say, but like because I've identified as Asian since I was. Whereas growing up in Korea, if you grew up in Korea, you're not gonna. You Asians know that they're Asian, right? But I'm saying like when you grow up as an Asian ethnicity, as a minority, I don't think you really. The way I look at it is like I think you appreciate that ethnic identity, the racial identity aspect of it a lot more, and so because when there aren't so many Koreans, like you're just going to want to hang out with other Chinese or Japanese kids, right? There's like oh, there's a kid named Yoshi, and like he's the only other Asian kid in my class. Like I want to be friends with him, and it's just a natural human thing, right? It's like when if a black kid and an Indian kid are in the same classroom, right? They might hang out just because they kind of look more similar. They have a similar shade of skin, brother from another mother of a similar skin color, as I say, and and it's just like that's the funny thing about life is just like, yes, there is this bad blood in history between Korea and Japan, but Korean Americans, especially people like me, like we're just so divorced from all that. It's just like we don't see, but like I look at you as like my Japanese American brother. Like to me, you and I, we're both Americans, but I also see us as Asians because like when it was just us against the world, it was just you and me against the world, Gavin. Growing up in let's say somewhere in America, you and I are the only Asian kids and we're the only friends on the block, right? Yeah. Forget all the bad blood between our peoples in the past. Like I don't give a fuck about that. I'm just a lonely kid glad to have another friend who kind of looks like me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's actually being a minority in America has taught me to appreciate that and appreciate a sort of pan-Asian identity and heritage and a collective consciousness. And I want to help all my Asian American brothers and sisters so that we can, because what we have is so powerful, being a child, a product of the East and West, that this goes deep and our potential is limitless in terms of, economics, in terms of what we can do as captains of industry, in finance, and culture, arts, entertainment. Like the possibilities are just endless, especially in this day and age, where we have had relative peace and prosperity worldwide, current geopolitical tensions aside, we have so much potential and we're so fortunate. How did we get so lucky, Gavin?
I mean, good point. I mean, that's a good piece around that. Like, kind of just going back that right now, it's a blessing where we are expanding, I just say, as this Asian diaspora, if we want to say, because it's much more than just Asians, man. Like I have friends from all different walks of life, but since we're on this, and maybe speaks to a lot of more Asian American people, we're at a space where all of these typecasts and stereotypes that has binded, that media has portrayed Asian Americans or Asians as of being like nerdy or being the subservient. That narrative is starting to shift. That really narrative is starting to really shift, and this is a great time for us, like with advent of AI technologies with the blend of individualism and collectivisms to really like finding ways on how we can truly chart our path. And that our paths too may be a little non-traditional from historical models of living, of historical models of living. And that really does take something to tread life a little differently. And that can be conflicting inside of family dynamics as well. I'm 37, I'm 37 years old. I don't have kids right now. I'm at a place where I don't know if I want to have kids right now. And that is very non-traditional, right? That's a very non-traditional piece. When all of my friends in high school, they are having kids, they have kids and they're settled down with the wife, based pieces, And so what I'm taking is a kind of like this non-traditional view of life that's going to be different from a common narrative, And so I'm not here to tell anybody how to live their life. I just know we have these different situations, whether my mom died 2 years ago, these situations, they can fortify us and like what really matters. Oh, I guess the CEO life of me wanting to run my own business completely is a false narrative. It's something that I don't need to be the CEO of my business. It took my mom dying in order for me to look in the mirror and be like, what do I truly want? I want to work on teams. I want to feel like I'm growth-driven teams where we're making impacts together. That could be if I have my own business and I have a team with that, which I still have clients on the side. But then it's also opening up possibilities for me to find these other avenues like Zealot Life and Ultra Speaking that I'm so grateful for. I'm leveraging my gifts with coaching and I get to be on the team. It provides additional income on top of my coaching business that I have. And I think these hard situations, if anybody is encountering these challenges in life, these are great. I don't even want to say like they could be opportunities right here. These are moments. These are moments where it doesn't feel like flow. It feels like a lot of ebb. It feels like it's shit right there. But that's times of deep introspection, of deep world-shaking things on who am I? What does it matter? How do I want to spend my life? That ebb is truly valuable, even doesn't feel good, right? And that was a real rough road these past 2 years. But I'm kind of clearing it out because I've been processing this grief. My mother, less than 2 years ago, would be in the hospital right now. And every day we're driving back and forth being like, damn, is she going to die? And she got really sick really fast. Could not have anticipated it. 3 weeks. Mother's Day, boom. 2023, she was walking. She was getting, sicker and stuff, but we didn't know what it was. None of the blood tests had anything conclusive. And then, the next day she had to go to the hospital. She was paralyzed and 3 weeks later, boom, gone, So these moments right now is this approaching the second year is different. Like the body keeps a score. And I think for someone that's so heady, it could get confusing when the grief or I get sad all of a sudden. And I have to what is that about? Oh, yeah, this is around time my mom's in the hospital. So I've been a little more emotional recently, everyone, And that's okay. I'm not going to break a window about it. I want to be responsible about it. But I need to have little moments for me to let that release valve. That's why I got my men's circle, right? That's why I got my meditation. But I have these two menu items of what are things I can do alone. Music, meditation, journaling, walking, working out, right? Protein shakes in the morning with my creatine. I love that, right? Sometimes Netflix when I want to chill. But then I also have my men's circle, the collective, right? It's kind of, you could think about that individual collective. It's like more as a metaphor. But I need menu items for both of them. And that helps me navigate the shit. And hopefully it turns into fertilizer. But, yeah, it's not all roses. It's not all roses. But the ebb is just as valuable as the flow.
For sure.
Yo, that's how it go. Let it grow,
Yeah, I think this the idea of flow and in speech is so powerful, especially as for us Asian males. The word is cerebrotonic, and it just means very introverted.
What's that mean?
And then it means introverted and in your head all the time. You're I guess you're just
cerebrotonic.
Yeah, a cerebrotonic person. It just means an introverted, person who's in their head a lot and they think about a lot of things, right? So as I don't know if antidote is the right word, but I feel like you've taken a life path to really try to address maybe I don't know how to put this the right way. Like the weaknesses or the tendencies that we have to always just be like kind of introverted and stuck in our thoughts because of our cultural or family upbringings, And so for me, like when I think of freedom and I think of who I want to be, like I want to be able to speak what's on my mind freely, Obviously, there's a lot to be said about respecting other people and conducting yourself in an honorable way in society. But to just be able to speak freely what's on your mind, isn't that a sense of freedom? And to just speak yourself confidently without stuttering, not like actually stuttering, but like like the emotional stutters, like, oh, if I say this, like what are people going to think about me, And for me, like that's something that I really want to overcome, and that's kind of like why I started going out a lot in my 20s as well. Is like I would just go out and like I'm socially awkward. I don't have any friends, but I'm just gonna go out and talk to people. I even studied a bit of like I went through a little pickup phase and did cold approaches. Like, oh, I'm gonna talk to guys and girls, and it wasn't just to talk to girls and like to try to get laid, although of course there's that part of it, but it was just like I need to get out of my shell. I want to be like I want to unlock who I know I could truly be, which is like a confident, charismatic person who's not afraid to just go up and just talk to anyone and then just express something and then also listen and make and then have an exchange of value, an exchange of ideas. Or just like crack jokes and just like bring up the vibe. That's what I loved about being a club and party promoter for several years. Is just that I just had an excuse to just go up to everyone like, hey, how's it going? What brings you out to this event? What brings you out to this club? It's like, oh, really?
Nice.
Okay. I work at a club. Why don't you come out with your friends sometime? It's always a good fun. I just want to show people a good time. If you don't like it, don't come. If you don't, you can stop by, have a shot, and then just bounce if you want. And then most of the time they would stick around all night. Just like. So I admire what you do, Gavin, is what I'm saying. And I think that's great. And I think because I feel like I don't know why nature made us this way. It's just thousands of years of the greasy wheel gets the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The hammer, the nail that sticks out gets the hammer, And it's just like it's 장단점, it's just the pros and cons of.
What is that word? Is that the same thing that you're saying in Korean?
Yeah.
Is that what? Okay.
장단점. There's probably a 장단점. Yeah, there's probably a Japanese equivalent. It means 장 means strong and tan means like weak. So or like against, like a con. And then 점 is like a point. So it's basically pros and cons. So I think the being such a collectivist society, right? Like Asian societies, us being so collectivistic, we have to like just follow orders and follow structure and hierarchy. And if we have like ideas, then we're shut down, right? There's strength to that, obviously. There's strength in numbers and organization and unity and coherence. But then where we suffer is that when we need innovation, when we need to take risks, we're not going to do that, right? And who is more cerebrotronic and risk averse than freaking Japanese people, right? It's like, so for me, you're like a walking, flowing contradiction, Gavin. Like we all are as Asian diaspora, and like any ethnic minorities is a contradiction. But especially for us being Korean, Japanese Americans, like we come from these cultures that are so like stifled, right? And it's to me, it's so frustrating because we could be so much more. Is when we compare ourselves, inevitably to say like our American counterparts. And it's just I don't know where am I going with this, but I'm just saying I admire what you do. I admire what you do, and I want not that everyone has to be like this caricature, because there's also a thing of like if we're trying so much to break the stereotype cast that we become a new stereotype, So I think there's something to be said about finding some sort of middle ground, and ultimately, no one can tell you who you are but yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that come up around this, because I really just get this kind of, you with this piece, this like drive, or even like a frustration around like, this side that's like repressed, this sense that like, of
it's
like
a prison
holding
we put on
back
ourselves.
and it is, and there's a piece where for myself, because when I just think about the Japanese American journey before I was born, and like the bricks like of my ancestors, there's a word in Japanese, like I love it, it's what we say before we eat, called itadakimasu, which means thank you for everything that it took to make this happen. And I reflect on this sometimes, not every day, but like, yeah, I'd say it every day before I eat, but I reflect on like, dang, like what had to happen for me to be here? And these are like these reminders that I'll say to myself of like, wow, well, World War II had to happen, you know, for better or for worse, it had to happen. And like my family had to come together to choose LA, raise me inside of this. My grandfathers were, I didn't meet one of them, but my other grandfather was a gardener. So they were the gardeners of America, right? After the war, they were the ones that were gardening. Like you probably won't see Japanese American gardeners nowadays, because college education or things they were committed. So come a long way, actually, Japanese Americans. And as I'm about to become an uncle, because my sister, God bless her heart, and my brother-in-law is bringing a son into the world late July, early August, I'm starting to really look at like what kind of traits do I really want to communicate, like non-verbally, and how I am to my nephew that's going to be coming into this world. And I think that's like, it's same with the question that came on when my mom passed away. How do I really want to be living my life if it wasn't about living my life to try to make her just proud? Like, you know, and in certain ways, what's the life that I truly, you know, want to live that would make me proud? And that's, you know, kind of this driving force that for anybody out there, it won't be the same answer to Jimmy who sits next to you, right? But we're really at a place now where we can really start to define what does that look like, you know, for us. And for me, it's like really being that no matter where I'm at the stage in my life, I'm going to value my health. I'm going to take care of my health, and I'm going to do that in the way that I eat, the way I track, the way I leverage my body. I'm starting to take boxing lessons, right? I want to have this kind of sense of an impact around, I don't know my clear mission, like right now, but it has to do with self-expression. It has to do with creating spaces for people to build confidence with their voice, you know, with empathy and directness, not one or the other, both. And I think that Asian Americans were just collectivistic, individualistic. It's beautiful. We actually have that. And it can seem like a conflict, but I think that's such a beautiful thing, the fact that we have both, or even the fact that we may feel conflicted with it. We have both. We have both. And so for some of us, it might be practicing more directness, which is a part of my journey, because I have a lot of empathy. I'm very naturally diplomatic. So I'm going to try to find the through line of a situation, but that's not always in service. Sometimes it's like, what do I think about this? What do I think about it? So it's kind of like knowing, am I more empathetic? Am I more direct? And I was practicing the other way is going to help to find that sweet medium spot that I think that you were mentioning, like how to kind of like, you know, dance with this both of individualism, collectivism, instead of in a sense that's always frustration, you know, kind of a peace, even though frustration can be motivating. So that's, yeah, man, I'm proud to be an Asian American here. I give a shout out to all of you who's spending time to listen here today. And no matter if you're extroverted or introverted, I think your voice is so powerful. And even if you take the time to, I think that this thing right here, everyone, you can't see, but I'm putting my phone up here, I think that the phone is so powerful because if you have a video, you can really start to, like, I just reminded when the day my mom died, like, I went back home and I showered and shit, and I put on the video of myself, and I just said something along the lines of, so it's 11 o'clock, just 4 hours ago my mom died, and I don't even know. I'm just tired, you know. I don't know what to think about this, but I know it's a long road ahead. But a part of me is also at peace because she's no longer suffering, and I'm gonna miss her. And that was a timestamp. I recently revisited that, and I'm like, wow, that kid was in shock. He was hurting. He was burnt out. And who I am today, I'm so different, man. Like it's just different from that. But they're timestamps. And I actually like to see myself on camera, and I think that there's a level of awareness that we build if we can learn to have affinity for who we see on the camera, how our voice sounds. A lot of people run away from video and sound because they're like, I don't like the way it sounds. And I think it's stripping ourselves from the opportunity, beyond vanity, all of that. It's just to like get to know ourselves more. So I invite people to start just recording themselves on video, if not for anybody else, just for yourself, on and just talk about like something you're confused about. Talk about something that what lights you up. What do you think about that other people don't know, and revisit it. And find something. What did you like about this person? What did you like about his expression? Speak in third person. Her expression. Is there anything that you would advise this person to do? And speak in third person. It creates a healthier detachment. But that's another way that we can leverage this vanity thing that people think that's video, when it's actually one of the most underutilized self-awareness tools that I think. So, yeah, take it or leave it, everyone. But your voice is worthy of being heard.
That's a great point. That like that nowadays, because smartphones are so ubiquitous, this technology. We're I don't know if we're even beginning, right? Just like with freaking AI, to begin to understand like the potential, right, that we have with all this technology, and how it can aid us. So, yeah, I really love everything that you just said, and I'm sorry to hear about your mother. I didn't know she passed away a couple years ago. It must be very difficult, to still be processing that. But I think it's also so healthy and natural in a way for you to just express that, like just here on this podcast, right? Because it's a real important thing, right? And I appreciate and respect you being vulnerable here, brother. But it's just like that's not what Asian men do, Yeah. Asian men aren't just gonna be like potentially frustrated. Hey, like my mom, died a couple years ago, and so I'm still working through it. Like who? Yeah. Look,
it's
not easy.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, man. And like this is maybe another thing to impart too. Is like this is not my first time talking about my mother too. And the first time, if I'm going to be talking about it to a friend, like I didn't want to because I was in the grief. And so I think that for number one, time can be healing when there's given time to process stuff. Number two, I love this definition of wisdom. Is like wisdom is when you can talk about something and it doesn't have the same emotional charge that it once had, right? And for me speaking it's the intention is not to relive and re-traumatize myself or whatever about like that experience, those 3.5 weeks it was not the intention of that. But if there's somebody else out there who's going through some type of grief, who's going through something where it's like, God, like my whole world turned upside down, shit, this wasn't a slow roll cancer. It's like, what the fuck, I was going through an existential crisis for like a year. I think that our challenges can be in service to somebody else, that like, yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone if you're going through it, whether you lost a job, like I lost my mother, but then there can be grief in that. Like if something has changed, that you wish was maybe different, and the guilt that came around that afterwards of like, maybe I could have spent more time with her, or, all these things that kind of come up. That's, it's just a part of this journey. And so I think having that comfortability in small circles or with friendships, whatever, to start unraveling these crevices of our life to where you can talk about it like I did right here, to where we can open up conversations around grief. And like, this is something we can normalize. What if this was just an ongoing conversation to acknowledge grief as a part of life, not something to shame ourselves for? Because it's an undertone of love. And I think about my mom. I have this whole thing. Look, this is her. If you see the video of this podcast, but I'm holding up an urn of my mom's ashes. And every podcast episode I've been on, just a few this past year, I shout out my mom. Like, she was amazing, And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from her. I learned a lot how she carried herself in the hospital's bed, And she would say that love is forever. It transcends space and time. And so if I can bring a sense of love, that I remember an acronym, leaving others vibrantly empowered. I remember this spoken word artist in economics class. I think he was a former teacher or a former student of the economics teacher. So he just came in and it was there was a thing that I remember more than anything else in a classroom. It was this Latino former student that said love is an acronym and it means leaving others vibrantly empowered. Like, I feel like that's just a part that, when we think about love, it's like, how can we bring a little more of that into our world? Because we never know what someone else is going through underneath, sometimes even a smile. We never know, right there. And when we learn to talk about our stories, our experiences more, and not be taken by the emotion of it, I think that comes with reps, but it really in itself can be a contribution, even if the contribution is just that it makes someone else feel like they're not alone. Your story matters. Oh, start it off on video, but just for yourself, you know. But it's worthy of practicing.
Yeah. Wow, Gavin, that's really powerful. Yeah. You know, for the purpose, we're over an hour now, so I think it is getting to that time we should wrap up. But I just want to re-emphasize to, you know, all our listeners, all our brothers and sisters, whoever's dropping in, you know, you can if you want to speak with more confidence, you know, or if you want to learn how to be more expressive, if you realize, you know what, I don't like how I look in front of a camera, or I don't look like how you know, I sound on the phone on a recording, and like I want to fix that, right? Or maybe it's something you never even thought about. You know, I never like the way that I sound or the way that I come across right in front of other people, in sort of visual or audio. And again, it's not a thing about vanity, like, oh, I have like the coolest, sexiest voice, or like, oh, I'm like such a sexy, you know, handsome, beautiful, whatever. You know, you know, that's not what I'm talking about necessarily. I'm not necessarily knocking on a bit of vanity either, but it's just like being more comfortable in your own skin and loving and accepting yourself for who you are, which is something I think is lacking for a lot of us, like all humanity, but especially for a lot of you know, our Asian brothers and sisters out there in the way that we experience these things. So, Gavin, would you say that is possible, right, to work on yourself, to love yourself more, accept yourself more through, you know, positive speech flow therapy?
Like, not just positive speech flow therapy. Like, I just think that, yeah, absolutely. Like, your voice is worthy of being heard, even just on a camera, for yourself, by yourself, with yourself. And it doesn't always have to be skewed in the positive. You could just have it like, you know, using the prompt of sometimes I feel da-da-da, and just go back to that prompt. And then, to me, that video could really be in a microcosm of life, because you can sometimes feel a lot of different ways. Sometimes I just feel like a piece of shit for not waking up at my first alarm clock, even when I tell myself that I want to do it. There's just something about that kind of irks me. Sometimes I actually feel joyous just by simply sitting. Like, I was at the beach the other day, and I don't usually stop by the beach by myself, and I meditated there. And I look up, the wind's caressing my face, and I look at other people that I don't know, but it looks like they're having a good time. This one lady next to me was by herself, and it just reminded me, wow, we're just all like on this like spinning fucking ball of life, trying to, you know, live whatever we think is going to be a good life. And I think about that when I drive sometimes. But you see, that prompt is going into these different crevices of my psyche. So if I was to rewatch this back in that moment, it would reveal some things of, where did I feel most connected? Where did I feel most insecure talking? Right there. What truly matters to that person? And that alone, I think, could really help somebody to. At first, I think there's a short-term compromise, sacrifice of like, God, he looks terrible. Damn, she looks so bad. Or these judgments. But working through that, I think there's a next level where you can really be actually a great coach to yourself. And to me, I think it does build this thing that we call self-esteem, to see ourselves in another light. Because, yeah, we never see video. Video is the only time we can see ourselves in another light. So I haven't been posting too recently, but you can bet I'm freaking recording myself like every day, you know, at certain points about something that I'm thinking about. And it's a great excavation process. So yes, your voice does matter, and you can always start on video just for yourself.
That's great. And is there anything you want to say, right, to our listeners? Anyone who's like struggling out there, going through a rough time, or is just on their journe, right? What's something that you want to share from your heart?
I just hope that, like, another thing, as I call it, release valves, that I just hope that everyone, you find your release valves, because I just think of it like an overinflated basketball. That sounds at life. I used to play basketball, so in love of life, things happen, we hold it in, there gets more X put into the ball, and the more that unless we have some way to release it, the air, it just builds up, and it's hard to just get a handle on life. It's hard to really make those baskets, and it's just like, what's going on? Maybe they don't have any healthy release valves, right? So if you are struggling with release valves, you can try with the journaling. We offered a few things today, right? Journaling to start excavating your thoughts, mind dumping via ChatGPT, video, using video as a way to release in a way, and then rewatch it. These aspects. But if you're still struggling, peace, then hope you find a community too. Feel free to reach out to me at Gavin Masumiya on Instagram or on Facebook if you wanted to just get more clarity in a way, or someone to talk to about that. But that concept of, I hope that you can find a community or a few people that you can let your guard down to release a little bit, and that'll allow you to get a better handle on life. You're worthy of those release valves. To release is to receive.
That's great. Yeah. Yes, listeners, brothers and sisters, if you can make a journey back to the motherland for a couple years, even if it's just as an English teacher, I would say it's worth it, and you wouldn't regret it. And whether you go or not, journal, right? Always be on this journey of self-introspection. It will help you, right? Like, just it's philosophy, right? Like, what's a life worth living? If we're going Socratic about it, right? And for people with identity issues like us, like we're maybe coming from the framework of like an ethnic minority, Asian diaspora, right? Like, you have to find the answers for yourself, and it's not going to happen unless you're kind of doing the work and you're journaling or meditating, or you're even just listening to a podcast like this and thinking about it on your own. Even then, it's just like, it's not like, oh, one day I'll have it all figured out and I'll know who I am. Maybe it is like that for some people, but the fact that you're just making these progress, just the act of doing it, you're doing it for yourself, is so monumental. It can be so healing, just and affirming. So yeah, journal, or at least don't let the ideas go. It helps if you write, but if you want to find answers, then keep looking. And in the act of searching, even if it's not what you think it is, you'll learn more. You'll gain more wisdom. You'll gain more perspective. You'll gain compassion, and hopefully the love and acceptance for yourself and all humanity that we all desire deep down inside. And as well as finding the balance between individualism and collectivism in our identities. Man, that's like a whole nother hour podcast we can talk about. But yeah, you guys have a voice. Whoever's listening, just thank you so much for listening to our voices. Yes. And I would just like to close this out with a quote from one of my favorite American authors and philosophers, Ralph Waldo Emerson. This is from his essay, Self-Reliance. And it says on page 18, insist on yourself, never imitate. Your own gift you can present every moment with the cumulative force of a whole life's cultivation. But of the adopted talents of another, you have only an extemporaneous half possession. That which each can do best, none but his maker can teach him. No man yet knows what it is, nor can, till that person has exhibited it. Where is the master who could have taught Shakespeare? Where is the master who could have instructed Franklin, or Washington, or Bacon, or Newton? Every great man is unique. The Scipianism of Scipio is precisely that part he could not borrow. Shakespeare will never be made by the study of Shakespeare. Do that which is assigned you, and you cannot hope too much or dare too much. There is at this moment for you an utterance brave and grand as that of the colossal chisel of Phidias, or trowel of the Egyptians, or the pen of Moses, or Dante, but different from all these. Not possibly will the soul, all rich, all eloquent, with thousand-cloven tongue, deign to repeat itself. But if you can hear what these patriarchs say, surely you can reply to them in the same pitch of voice, for the ear and the tongue are two organs of one nature. Abide in the simple and noble regions of thy life, obey thy heart, and thou shalt reproduce the foreworld again.
Choo!
Yeah.
All right.
That's Ralph Waldo Emerson dropping bars a couple hundred years ago. And I just love that paragraph, and I love that essay, Self-Reliance. It's all about rugged American individualism, right? Which is topic for another time. But everyone, you have a voice. And Gavin, thank you so much for sharing your voice with us today. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Is that it?
Oh, just yeah, domo arigato gozaimasu. Yeah, thank you for having me on here.
Arigato
And thank you all for
gozaimasu.
those yeah. Thank you for lending thank you for everyone listening for lending an ear too. Bless you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And we'll talk to you next time. MAIM time. And yes, you can reach out to Gavin. I'll put all his info and site and socials and whatnot in the description of this episode. Okay.
Yeah.
Peace to y'all. Peace.